The year 2000 was a pivotal year as it ushered in the new millennium. This was pre-September 11th. We had survived the anticlimactic Y2K, and music was booming. CD sales were at their peak in the US, but all of this would begin to change with the rise of digital media. The charts were filled with bubblegum pop, which I was not into whatsoever. But the good thing that came out of it was that it provided a stark contrast to the rise of new sounds, genres, revivals, and superstars. I'm going to take you through some of my favorite albums of 2000. It is hard to believe that these albums are all turning 25 in 2025. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button as we continue to build this community together. And if you want to add any of the albums I talk about to your collection, head over to vinyl.com and you can use my personal code, The Spin, to get 10% off of anything on the site. I'll include that link and my promo code below in the show notes as well. Kicking off with albums turning 25 in 2025, I'm going to start with Deftones' White Pony. This gem is a landmark album in alternative metal. It felt groundbreaking at the time, but no one had any idea of the long-lasting influence this record and this band would continue to have. This was their third album and marked a new sound for Deftones, expanding the nu metal scene by incorporating additional influences like trip-hop, post-hardcore, and shoegaze, creating a more atmospheric and experimental sound. White Pony debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, right below Britney Spears' Oops, I Did It Again, showing the juxtaposition of the time. Pop was topping the charts, but rock was also right there to ground us, thankfully. White Pony is still their highest-selling album to date and became their first platinum record. I just love how this album and this band continues to influence and inspire new generations. Gen Z loves Deftones, which truly warms my heart. In 2024, Deftones played Coachella for the first time, and artists like Trippie Redd, MGK, Jade, and Jutes have all shared with me personally the impact this band has made on them, further showing that this album has stood the test of time. I am a huge fan of Chino in general. I also love his band Crosses, and I always try to see both bands whenever they're in town. 2000 was also a year for many groundbreaking debut albums. I am going to start with Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory. Mic drop.
Listen responsibly.
I'd like to share that I first heard of Linkin Park through a movie soundtrack, the Dracula 2000 soundtrack. This was an important soundtrack to me because at the time, I was a Sony college rep helping to promote albums coming out on Columbia Records, and promoting this soundtrack on and around my Penn State campus was part of my job. So not only did my work help me land College Rep of the Year, but it turned me on to this sick soundtrack, which included bands like Disturbed, System of a Down, and a new band called Linkin Park.
Music from the Dimension Motion Picture. It'll knock you undead.
I was in my car playing this exact CD, and One Step Closer came on. I am not exaggerating. I pulled the car over to look at the jewel case to see who this artist was. Chester Bennington's vocals stopped me in my tracks. This was my introduction to one of the great vocalists of our time. But no one could possibly know at the time the impact Linkin Park's debut album Hybrid Theory was about to have. 4 massive singles from this album: One Step Closer, In the End, Crawling, and Paper Cut. It peaked at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and became the best-selling debut album since Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. Incredible. The band would go on to be friends of mine, and I had the honor of being with the band in the studio in 2017 when they were wrapping up their album One More Light, which would sadly be their final album with Chester, who passed shortly after. As we all know, Chester's legacy lives on through all of his amazing music and the impact he continues to have on so many of us. I had Mike Shinoda as a guest on the Allison Hagendorf show, and we really did a deep dive on the band's past and their early beginnings. I'm going to include the link to that full interview below.
We put Chester on the mic, and on the very first take, it was it was made. I don't know if we kept the very first take, but the very first take was exactly what you feel when you hear the song. And Don freaked out. He was running around the room. He's like, "Oh my God!" Like everybody knew it was special.
I have chills. Shut up when I'm talking to you.
It was incredible.
Another debut album from 2000 was the album Sickness from Disturbed. Oh my God, I was obsessed with this album and this sound and David Draymond's command and vocal prowess. I was 20 at the time in college, full of energy, anger, frustration, and this was my headbanging music. This was my workout music, and it never stopped for me. I have Disturbed on like every workout playlist of mine. Can we just talk about the song, Down with the Sickness? Please understand how massive this intro was. For the first 30 seconds, you have this ominous, crescendoing, tribal, guttural build, and it just all culminates into this like incredible. I mean, I still do that sound. I'm doing it right now. It's become a part of pop culture. Disturbed, one of the most powerful live shows. Love these guys.
There used to just be a pause. We used to pause for dramatic impact, and there was nothing. And one practice, I just went, wow. And lo and behold, now I'm sure that's what's going to be on my goddamn tombstone. Here lies David Draymond.
Another debut album from 2000, which would change everything for me, was A Perfect Circle's Mare de Noms. I was already a huge fan of Tool and Maynard, but this new dynamic between Maynard and Billy Howardell just seemed blissful. It resonated with me in a very special way. It was released on May 23rd, 2000 and entered the Billboard 200 at number 4, making it the highest ever Billboard 200 debut for a rock band's first album. Judith, 3 Libras, and The Hollow were all singles off of this album, but 3 Libras touched me so powerfully. To this day is one of my favorite songs of all time. When Maynard was my guest recently on the Allison Hagendorf show, I couldn't resist from asking him specifically about this song. I'm going to include a link to that full interview below in the notes as well.
It's not actually 3 people, it's 3 days of Libra. But that was the original impetus of it, is like realizing you had these cluster of people that all had similar behavior.
And so the you don't see me, the you don't see me, you don't see me.
That particular, if you're an astrology buff, those people are in love with being in love, not necessarily in love with you.
Right. Also, I would like to point out when Maynard came on my show, or may not have had him sign it. Moving on. Continuing the theme of debut albums, Papa Roach had their major label debut album in 2000 with Infest. I cannot express enough how big Last Resort was in particular. It was a quintessential song of the time, and the album earned the band a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist. In 2000, Papa Roach were on the Vans Warped Tour. They were on Anger Management Tour with Limp Bizkit and Eminem. They were on Ozfest. They were everywhere. I was there with them. I love these guys so much. I've had Jacoby on my show. We have carved pumpkins together on Halloween.
Oh my God! This feels incredible!
Just nothing but love and respect for Papa Roach. Switching gears from rock, you cannot talk about the year 2000 without talking about OutKast, Stankonia, one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. Talk about groundbreaking. The 4th studio album from the band. It was the first time they recorded in their brand new recording studio, Stankonia. This gave them more time and freedom to experiment and try new things sonically, incorporating an array of styles, including rock, funk, psychedelia, gospel, and even some rave elements as well. Andre 3000 also began experimenting vocally, trying out a more melodic style. The guys refrained from listening to hip-hop while making this album and instead drew influence from artists they loved like Prince, Jimi Hendrix, Little Richard, and George Clinton. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart and had 3 massive singles, B.O.B., Miss Jackson, and So Fresh, So Clean. Miss Jackson became the group's first single to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and OutKast ended up winning Best Rap Album for Stankonia and Best Rap Performance by a duo or group for Miss Jackson. The song is a masterpiece and is a perfect example of how OutKast is one of one. You can absolutely feel the inspiration from Prince, but OutKast was able to take that innovative spirit and make it all their own with their own sonic stamp. Stankonia really solidified OutKast in the mainstream as genre-bending trailblazers. There is only one OutKast, no one remotely like them, and this album is a gem.
Whatever OutKast do, gonna always be funky, so you can never expect to hear the same thing from us. I mean, we're gonna still keep the OutKast flow, beats, everything, you know what I'm saying, earth tone. It's Stankonia.
When I was hosting the Fuse Top 20 Countdown, Big Boy was a guest on my show, and I also had the great opportunity to visit Stankonia with Big Boy in Atlanta. We also went to his favorite food spot, Curly's, one of my favorite memories. Continuing on the theme of trailblazers, Eminem's Marshall Mathers LP turns 25 this year as well. It is one of the fastest selling rap albums in history. It has sold 25 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best selling albums of all time. Many people believe that this is his greatest album. It was nominated for Album of the Year and won Best Rap Album at the Grammys, while The Real Slim Shady won Best Rap Solo Performance. He also performed it at the MTV VMAs this year, which was absolutely iconic. It was like M with the 100 lookalikes that followed him into Radio City Music Hall for the live VMAs. We are witnessing a new beginning, not only in rap, but in pop culture. I can't express enough how game-changing this song was. This album also gave us Stan with that feature from Dido, another massive song and a perfect example of Eminem's cross-genre appeal. This album really showcased Eminem's talents, his poetic lyrics, emotional depth, and personal storytelling, which really resonated with fans and helped broaden the appeal of rap to a wider audience. M also introduced a certain playfulness and sarcasm and humor that was unique to him. This is the album that made him a household name and cultural icon. Eminem helped shape the direction of both rap and pop culture in the 2000s and has influenced a whole new generation of artists as well. I had the great privilege of sitting down for the exclusive sit-down with Eminem when I was hosting Bonnaroo for Fuse. It was totally last minute, as M originally didn't agree to do any press, but then all of a sudden it was like, he said okay. I was very intimidated, but we really clicked right off the bat, and he couldn't have been lovelier. We had a great conversation.
Hey, it's Allison here at Bonnaroo with Royce and Eminem of Bad Meets Evil. Guys, thanks so much for hanging.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thanks for having us.
He ended up inviting me to watch his headlining set from the stage. It was a packed crowd of 80,000 people chanting "Shady, Shady" for 5 minutes. It was an hour-long, incredible set, and he came back to the stage for an encore of Lose Yourself. I can tell you that I have seen countless shows, really special ones, but witnessing that and experiencing it from the stage with Eminem, core memory. Just so grateful for that one. Another album that pushed boundaries of genre in 2000 was Radiohead's Kid A. This album was a stark departure from their previous work. This really evolved their sound into a more avant-garde, experimental, electronic ambient feel. It was completely genre-defying. The album opener, Everything in Its Right Place, absolutely stunning. It doesn't sound like anything you've heard before, and instead just envelops you into this alternate universe. You just have to forget all that you think you know and just let this wash over you. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, proving that there was indeed an audience for experimental music in the mainstream. Kid A solidified Radiohead as one of the most innovative and influential bands and paved the way for a new wave of experimental artists like Arcade Fire, Bon Iver, Tame Impala, and Animal Collective. It basically showed that alternative and experimental music were not confined by predetermined boundaries and could be whatever you wanted it to be. Kid A represented musical freedom. U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind is also turning 25. This was the album that reaffirmed U2's status as the biggest band of their time. It was a return to form for the band. I personally loved their 1997 album Pop. It was a departure from their previous albums and was much more electronic leaning, but a lot of fans were not feeling it. Fans were hungry for this album, as it was a return to their roots and was more in the vein of their beloved Joshua Tree and Achtung Baby albums. What's also cool to note for context of the time is that U2 have always embraced the times and technology. They were one of the first major bands to use the internet as a tool for directly connecting with their fans, marking a shift in how music could be shared and consumed. They streamed Beautiful Day on the internet prior to the album's official release, which was really innovative at the time. This song was huge. It won 3 Grammy Awards for Song of the Year, Record of the Year, and Best Rock Performance. And U2 have played Beautiful Day at every single one of their concerts since the song's live debut on the Elevation Tour in 2001. The entire album is amazing, start to finish, but it took on an even greater significance after September 11th, when the songs just seemed to be even more relatable and anthemic. I saw them twice during their Elevation tour, once before September 11th and once after, and I will never forget seeing them at Madison Square Garden. The band dedicated the show to the victims of 9/11 and the city of New York. Everyone in that room was reeling from the aftermath of the terrorist attacks. You could feel the emotion, the devastation, the heartbreak, the desperation for hope and recovery. They had first responders up on the stage, and they showed all the names of the victims up on the screen. It was not a dry eye in the room. It was just incredibly cathartic, and this show and this album became a symbol of unity and resilience in a time of tragedy.
There was a lot of hostility to the idea when people said, you can't do that. In New York, you cannot do that. It's just too much. I said, no, we must do that. That's how you honor people.
U2 is one of my favorite bands of all time, and is still my favorite current band to see live. If you've never seen U2, it is a must, and if you have, you know it's a religious experience. One of my life highlights was getting to spend the day with the guys in the studio. I'm fortunate that I have gotten to meet so many of my heroes and idols, but getting to hang with U2 several times really wins for me. I distinctly remember hugging Bono here and not wanting to let go. It's kind of cringe, I know, because I was like hugging tightly, but it was an out-of-body experience for me. Those moments never get lost on me. My passion and my love of music is why I had to make it my career. So many other albums turning 25 in 2025, like Rage Against the Machine's covers album Renegades, which has the amazing Renegades of Funk cover, and albums like Binaural from Pearl Jam, Sunny Day Real Estate's The Rising Tide, one of my favorite albums, music from Madonna, Coldplay's Parachutes, an amazing year for music. Stay tuned for more episodes of The Spin presented by Vinyl.com. I would love for you to hit the subscribe button so you can get updates on upcoming videos and to help build this special music community. You can also head to Vinyl.com right now to see the full collection and use my code The Spin for 10% off of everything you buy. What was your favorite album of 2000? Share below, as I'd love to connect with you. Until next time, be kind to yourself and to each other.